Hello, my quilting friends. I'm Leah Day, a professional quilter, author, and online teacher. And this podcast is all about quilting, running a creative business, and balancing our busy hands with our busy lives. You can find the episode show notes and links to everything mentioned in this podcast at leahday.com. Enjoy the show. Hello, my quilting friends. Leah Day here with episode 14 of the podcast. Today, I have an interview with Kate Colleran about writing patterns and kind of the risks and benefits of offering free quilt patterns. You know, everybody has a different opinion about this, and it was really interesting hearing Kate's perspective. I'm also doing a collaboration with Kate this month. She sent me a really cute quilt block and she made it with her braid template. And I checked this out at Quilt Market and it was really cool. So she made a block and then she's going to share a video on how to piece it. And then I'm going to share a video on how to quilt it. So that's going to be coming up next Wednesday. So be looking forward to that. Now for a few updates about what's been going on around the house. I've slowed down this podcast to posting every other week, so I have a bit more to share with you in this introduction, and I hope you don't mind. I really like being able to share with you just like a bit of behind the scenes about what's going on. I feel like there's so much that we're sharing that I don't really get to talk to you about and share how it's all kind of being posted and how it's all being created. So I really enjoy being able to talk through it and how it all works here on the podcast. So one big thing that I'm really proud of is I have gotten back to my walking foot book. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that this book has been in progress since the fall, and I started working on it, and I had to put it on hold because I, really, the machine quilting block party takes a lot of time and a lot of focus and energy, and I couldn't do the two things at the same time. And trying to balance the two of them just really wasn't working. So I had to set the walking foot book aside and just say, okay, that is on pause, and then get the block party launched, get ahead on the blocks, write those patterns, get as many blocks pieced and quilted as I could. And then now things have calmed down a little bit and I'm able to say, okay, how much time do I have realistically in my day to work on this book and work on the block party at the same time? And so I found I have maybe about 15 to 20 minutes, and that's not a lot. So I really needed to organize everything and get it to where I could, sit down, knock out 15 to 20 minutes, and then go on to something else. And that sounds a little crazy, but that's all I've got. I don't have long swaths of time anymore to work on anything. So, I really needed to get it organized. I think that was the biggest problem with the book, is that it was really kind of a mess. And I was sitting down and kind of writing and a little bit of working on the patterns, and everything was just kind of in many different places and many different pieces. So I took the book and said, okay, let's get organized. And I took some index cards and wrote down one topic on each index card. So something like, machine setup, and then like tools and supplies. Every quilting book has to have this stuff in it, and I have to cover these things in order to get you started on the right foot. So I made a list of everything I wanted to cover, plus all of the designs that I want in the book, plus all of the projects that are going in the book, and then troubleshooting and finishing techniques, all that good stuff. So I just made an index card for every single thing, and then spent an hour or two sitting at the kitchen table just rearranging it until it felt right to me. And that was just a process. It was one of those things that every time I arranged it before, it always felt kind of, how is the best word? It's maybe squishy, just like, that thing really doesn't need to be right there. Like those designs really need to be punched out in their own chapter, or those techniques really need to be better organized and not kind of, everything was just kind of merging together in a really weird way. So I feel like it's on the right track now. And the best thing is I can pick up an index card, just grab an index card, write that little section, a couple paragraphs sometimes is all it needs. The quilt patterns take more time. I've got to double check my math. I've got to double check my cutting, all that good stuff. But for the most part, I can write a blog post in 30 minutes or 15 minutes. I can write a chapter of my book in about the same length of time. It doesn't have to take so much time. And that's really working well now. It was one of those things that I think I just needed to learn my own system. And I think the index cards is how I work. I think that's just going to be how I put my books together from now on. So it just really feels good to be moving forward with that project and feel like it's going somewhere, even if it's going there slowly. It does feel like there is some movement, and that feels really nice. I hate it when I have a project and I'm working on it and then it just kind of gets set to the side, and then it's this big ... When is that ever going to get done? It's a UFO. And even more than that, it's a UFO in my head. Like that thing is always sitting there going, oh yeah, when are you ever going to get back to that project and get it done? I've got a lot of things like that. And it's really frustrating to feel like I'm not being effective, or even worse, that I'm wasting my time, that all that time I spent this summer and fall working on these quilts was somehow wasted. So I really do want to get that done. And I have so many other books too. I think this is kind of a learning process to get a system that works. And then all the other books that I want to write, that I really want, to work on, are going to be that much easier. And developing that system is worth taking a little bit more time right now to develop, and then everything else will be easier from then on. So that feels really, really good. The other new thing that we're doing this, see here, we started this month, and that's Sit Down Quilting Sunday. I hope that you've checked out some of these videos. They're really good. So basically I got a sit down long arm, sit down or table mounted, it's a synonymous name. So basically it is a long arm quilting machine that is set up in a table so it does not move. The quilt is still moving, so it's still just like quilting on a domestic machine, a home machine. And I am working on a Grace Q-Nique 14 Plus. It is a very small long arm and very inexpensive. So for about the same price, $3,000 to $4,000, you could get, let's say, a Janome Horizon, and that is like maybe an 11-inch harp space, or you could get a Grace Q-Nique, which is a long arm. And it is designed for machine quilting. It is designed for free motion quilting. And then eventually, if you decided, hey, I really want to try frame quilting, you could then buy a frame and an upgrade kit and put that machine on a frame, And I like that aspect of it, that it will grow with you. And if you're interested in learning more about the machine and more about the company, I did a podcast a few weeks ago with Nathan from Grace Company. So definitely check that out and listen to that podcast too. So this week, I really want to share quilting on a real quilt, because so far I've mostly been doing kind of small tests on quilt sandwiches or practice sandwiches, that kind of thing. And that's only going to show you so much. I really need to get on a real quilt and start figuring out what that feels like. So I've had this table runner sitting around forever. It is just a pre-printed panel, basically. I got it at IKEA. And I didn't like that it was a single layer of fabric. It was just kind of a canvasy kind of material. And I didn't like that it was a single layer of fabric, because when I run it through the wash, it just comes out a complete wrinkly mess. So I wanted to quilt it. So I picked out the kind of the edge hem that was all around the edge, picked that out, and then put it in a pile of other quilt tops and left it there for 2 years. So this is going to be good. It's going to knock out a UFO project that I've had for years. And it's also going to get me quilting something real on this machine, which is excellent too. So I've got that basted up. And it was one of those perfect times where I looked in my stash and was like, oh, here's the perfect size of fabric. And then I looked in my batting stash and it was, oh, here's the perfect piece of batting. It was one of those perfect times where everything seems to already be cut for it just exactly right. And I didn't have to piece anything to the backing. I just love that. It was perfect. So this is going to be posted tomorrow, as this podcast comes out on Saturday. So that's going to be posted on Sunday. So I'm going to be quilting on that table runner, and it's got these kind of big funky pears printed on it. So I'm going to quilt around the pears and then quilt in the background with something simple, and just mostly learning how to control the machine, learning how to control my speed, talking through that process. And it is a process that takes time to adjust to. It's a very fast machine. It's a long arm. It's able to go very, very fast. And working that with the foot pedal and controlling those speeds, that's really the adjustment that you have to make whenever you're quilting on a table-mounted long arm or sit-down long arm. So I'm really enjoying this series, and I'm really liking working on a machine that I really love to use. And a lot of people have been asking me about my other table-mounted long arm and why I stopped using it, why I switched. And I'm just, I kind of keep it simple. I don't want to bash any other machine companies or anything like that. But basically, I felt like, this machine is small, tidy, and very simple. And the features that it does have, they work. They work consistently. There's no hitting something or turning something on and it just not responding. Everything works the way it should. And that's what I love about it the most. And it's, in that way, it is very dependable and very reliable. And that's what I need in a sewing machine. That's what I need in a long arm. So that's why I switched, and I could not be happier. And it feels really good to be using something that I like, because I can never get away from the fact that other people will watch those videos and then go, oh, okay, that's a good machine. I'm going to go get that too. And I want to be able to use something that I feel comfortable promoting, and I really like the Grace Unique, and I am very comfortable promoting it and saying, yes, this is worth the money. This is worth $3,000 or $4,000. It is going to do the job that you're wanting it to do. So be looking forward to that sit-down quilting Sunday and see how I quilt this real project. So that's it really for the updates that's going on around the house. We've got Quilty Box in progress. We got the Quilty Box stuff in, and Dad's working on piecing that quilt up, but I won't tell you anything about it quite yet. That will probably be out in the next week or so. And then, of course, we are going to QuiltCon next week. That's super exciting. So if you happen to see me there, give me a wave. I'd love to know that you're enjoying the podcast. So now for the sponsor of the show. This week's sponsor is my website, leahday.com, where you can find the new Dresden Plate template set, which is on sale for $5 off this month. This template set can be used to cut many Dresden shapes. So you can cut curved petals, straight edge petals, and make pointy petals. You can also do fused edge petals, really wide variety. And then you can mix and match them together to make even more Dresden plates. You can also cut out tumbler shapes as well, so you can make tumbler quilts, and you can use the templates for ruler foot quilting on your home machine. So check out the set at leahday.com/Dresden plate. And now here's the show. Hello, my quilting friends. Leah Day here with Kate Colleran of SeamsLikeADream.com. She is the author of Smash Your Pre-Cut Stash and the Craftsy class 3 Blocks 30 Quilts and the Craft University class Quilting for Home Decor. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about your business, Seems Like a Dream.
Well, I started it quite a few years ago with a friend of mine, and she has since retired from the business. But it's kind of funny how we got started. We met because I was a nurse, and I went to work at a nursing home, and she and I shared an office. She was the secretary for the nursing department. And we got to talking, as we got to know each other, and we started talking about crafting and quilting. She was a fairly new quilter, but she did a lot of crafts. And I was somebody who loved to make quilts. They were sort of my therapy as the kids were growing up. I quilted, I knitted, I did cross stitch. It's just what I love to do. Anyway, we got to talking and thought it would be really fun to start a quilt business. And we actually looked into buying a quilt shop because there was a store for sale, but it just didn't work out for us. And I had already started designing quilts for myself, basically. And so we thought, well, let's do that. And we did one of those things where you talk about it and you talk some more, and then, oh wait, you talk some more, and you buy fabric and you make a few things, but you don't really take that leap of faith and jump off the edge and start the business. And it wasn't until we took a trip taking one of my children up to college, dropped him off at school, and on our way back we stopped at a couple of quilt stores. And one of our first patterns was a cute little tote bag, and we stopped at a shop. And the owner said, I love your tote bag. And I said, oh, thank you. And she says, where'd you get the pattern? And I said, oh, we're pattern designers. Yeah, okay. And she's like, really? Can I get the pattern from you? Uh, yes, you can. And she said, great. And we told her that they were at the printer and we would get them to her as soon as we could. And she said, that's fine, no rush. So we ran home and we finished writing it and we had our friends test it and we printed it up and we were in business.
Wow,
So,
that is excellent. So where did
yeah.
the name come from?
The name came from, as we were thinking about what we wanted it to the name to be of our business, we did not follow typical business naming convention, which our name is way too long. It technically seems like a Dream Quilt Designs. Um, but it became the name because it was like a dream. It was a dream to start our own little business and to do something in a business with a hobby that we just thought was so much fun. So, and of course, seams, SEAMS, is a nod, obviously, to sewing and quilting and all that. So,
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about the partnership and how that worked, because I've known many women over the years that have had partnership businesses. A bead store that I worked at when I was in high school was a partnership between two women. A yoga studio here locally was a partnership between two women, and it worked. But every single time I've seen that, it's always broken up eventually. So tell me about that.
well, and I think there's a really good reason for that because I think as your business progresses, you may or may not have the same goals long term, and that's what happened with us. Um, when we first started this business, Elizabeth was working full time, I was working full time, we both had kids. So the business was a business, but it was a hobby business, is how I like to call it. So we did try to sell our patterns to shops. We did go to Quilt Market. We got a couple of patterns in a couple of magazines. But we were also, I mean, sometimes I was working 60 hours a week as a nurse, plus 3 kids. So this business was definitely a side business. And it worked out great initially because we had different strengths. I did all the designing. She wasn't as advanced a quilter as I was. Not that I'm all that advanced, trust me. But it was great because when I would write it, it had to make sense to her because she was newer than me. So we had a great partnership in I designed and wrote. She tested and said, oh no, we are not doing this. And it really did. It worked out really well. And we decided early on that our patterns were geared towards beginners to intermediates. We weren't looking to design for the experienced person. We wanted to write directions that a beginner could follow. And that was really important to us because for her, a couple times she bought a quilt pattern and she couldn't figure it out. So anyway, initially our partnership worked great. And then a few years ago, I moved from Connecticut, living in my hometown my whole life, to Colorado because my husband had lost his job and couldn't find a job back east and found a job in Colorado. So he and I moved. And I said, well, hubby, I've been a nurse for a really, really long time. I'll not say how long. And you're moving me across the country. How about if I see if I can make this quilting business work? And so for me, it became my full-time job. And we did that for a couple of years together. We wrote the book together. I wrote most of the book and designed all the quilts, and she made quilts and was, again, the tester and, proofreader and all that. But she was becoming, getting higher positions at her job and couldn't devote the time to this hobby business that I had just suddenly changed the rules on her and made a business. So that's why she ended up retiring because it just was more than she wanted it to be. So, and that makes sense, because our goals changed. And I think that might be a reason why a lot of partnerships don't make it long term is because in a business, you each have to want to go in the same direction.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it sounds like it was very amicable, where you obviously built it and continue to build it and grow it, and she retired. Now, did you buy her out, or
Yeah.
okay? Yeah, that's great because then there's it's always unfortunate when there's like ickiness, and bad hurt feelings and all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like it was really a good. It was a good partnership. It fulfilled its need, and then when you were ready to move on, you both moved on. That's great.
Yeah, so it worked out well. Yeah, we still keep in touch. So it's not like, I've never talked to her again because I know that's happened to some people. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, tell me about your goals now that it's a business and it's not a hobby business. And we met actually at Quilt Market, so obviously that's one of your goals is to sell more patterns and stuff. But tell me about that. Where do you want to go with this?
Well, and I think that's one of the things that I've learned over the course of doing this is that a quilt pattern business, just selling quilt patterns, is tough. And I know we're going to delve into it a little bit more in a second, but because you're always competing with free patterns that are out there on the internet. So when I started my business, that wasn't as big a deal. But now it's a huge deal. So what I've learned about my business is that I need to have sort of a multifaceted business, and that's what I've been trying to do. So in addition to doing quilt patterns that I sell myself, I've also been doing a lot of designing I've done some for fabric companies. I've been in a lot of magazines over the last couple of years. I've done the quilting videos. I'm doing hopefully another video soon, one for Craftsy and one for hopefully Craft University. I'll be doing some more, which is great. I'm starting to teach more at guilds, which I love doing. I love going to guilds and doing the lecture, and doing a trunk show and then maybe teaching a class. I think it's just so much fun. It's so much fun to meet quilters and talk with them because we're all so passionate about what we do. And I'm hopefully going to be writing a second book. So my thought is that what my business needs to do is it needs to have multiple arms, because I get tiny bits of revenue from all those little multiple arms.
Absolutely, 100%. It needs to be a spider with as many legs as possible.
Great way to describe it. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't, just me personally, I know I could not survive on pattern sales alone. It's just not possible. I think, and this is something that I talk about, low volume products versus high volume products. So a pattern is a low volume product. And that's why so many people decide to give them away for free. And what's your feeling about that? I went on your website and you do have a few patterns for free. Why don't you talk about that a little bit and kind of how you feel about free versus paid?
Well, I think there's a place for free, but I think it's really hard for pattern designers. And because I think what happens is that then people just look for the free things. They don't look to you for your paid products because they figure, well, I'll just get her free ones. And I think in some ways the free does diminish the value of the ones that we're asking people to pay for. I've done a lot of free. I've done a lot for fabric companies. So a lot of the ones that are on my website are ones that I have designed specifically for fabric companies. I mean, the part that the general public doesn't see, of course, is that behind the scenes, I did get paid a small amount to design that. But because we're offering it to them for free, it doesn't have the same value. People don't look at it the same way. And so I've been struggling with that lately and trying to decide, where does free long-term fit in my business model? There's a couple of people who've made comments about how some websites have a lot of affiliate links on them. Some of them have like pop-up affiliate links. And I think people don't realize that if they're offering you all these quilt patterns for free, they have to have another way to make money.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They got to get you somehow.
Yeah. I mean, free doesn't put food on the table.
And that's the thing that I've used free for, is to drive traffic, just as a building tool, as in, here I'm giving you this thing for free, please come and watch more. And it took me years before I started realizing, I've got to put ads on these YouTube videos. And so I started doing that. So now the video views themselves actually do make me money, whereas they did not before. And then, free patterns and stuff. I do come out with free patterns every month. But here's what I'm going to do with those. After posting that free pattern, I'm going to wait about 6 months to a year. And then those free patterns will be collected together and put into a book. Because it's already been out, it's already been free, it's already been pattern tested for me for free by all those people online, because they would let me know if there's a mistake, right? And so then I can collect them and put them in a book, and it's like, here, it's packaged. Now, will I take it down? That's the thing that's a question. Will I take that pattern down when it goes into a book, or will I leave it for free on my site? So that's also kind of a question. Have you ever considered something like that?
I have, and actually when I was at Quilt Market one time, I did listen to, how we can go to those lectures that people have, and I went to a couple of the business lectures, which is great. I mean, I think that the more you can learn about how to run a business and get new ideas, and chatting with people like we're doing is good for us, and it's good for quilters because we have more ideas on how to offer things to them. So one of the ideas I got was this woman did a block of the month. And so the block of the month was free for the month. And after the month ended, the free pattern went down, and then you had to buy it. So, yes. And it worked really well for her. People that wanted to wait every month and get it, they waited each month. But she actually offered at the beginning of her block of the month, at the beginning of the year, you could buy all the patterns up front if you didn't want to wait. So, she had it two different ways. But yeah, she did take the free ones down. So I've thought about doing that. I have a pattern I designed ages ago for a Connecticut quilt shop hop. And I thought, it was based off of individual blocks, and I thought it would be really fun to do that at some point as a block of the month. I've had it as a full pattern, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to offer one block a month for free? But then after that, you'd either have to buy that individual pattern or you could buy the whole thing. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, that's an interesting model. I did something similar last year, but it wasn't free. I did a kind of a price adjustment. So first 5 days of the month were $5 off, and then it rose back up to the normal price. And we tested it month by month and eventually found, it was creating too much customer confusion and irritation. But I think when something's free, that would stimulate the greatest number of people to get involved. So kind of getting them in the door. And then, if they miss it, hey, you missed a whole month. Like, you didn't come back to check things out for a whole month. That shows how engaged you are, So, hey, buy in if you want that thing. I don't think that that's a problem. I think that's a good model, actually. And it's something I'm considering for next year myself, too. So tell me about your braid template. This is something I saw at Quilt Market, and I love it. I think it's such a cool little tool. So tell me about manufacturing it and what it does.
Oh, okay. Thank you for asking. So in my book, Smash Your Pre-Cut Stash, we had one quilt. It's called Down the Garden Path. And we had taken a jelly roll and cut them into those braid shapes. And if I had thought about it, I would have had one here I could have shown you. But and what we had done in the book, of course, was had in the book a little drawn template, and then you could copy it onto template plastic. But template plastic, it's fluffy, and it's really hard to cut against. And I thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. But I realized that the size that I used in that particular quilt, I didn't want it to just cut that one size that was in that quilt. I wanted it to be a little bit more versatile. So I played around with it, and I ended up creating a template. It's 8.5 inches long, and it's 3 inches wide. And it has lots of increments on it. So what you can do with the template is you can cut that same shape using strips that are, say, 1.5 inches wide or 2 inches wide, all the way up to 3 inches wide. And then you can cut them different lengths, from 5 3/4 inches long all the way up to 8.5. So the longer you cut your shape, the wider your braid ends up being. So, depending on the application and what you want to do with it, you can make braids of different sizes. You can have strips of different widths. You can have all your strips the same in your braid. You could mix them up, which is really fun too. So it's been a really fun template. I've created a couple of patterns to go with it outside of the book pattern. I have one that's a table runner and placemats called Table Scraps. And then I have another one that I called Crosscut, and I used a layer cake. But you could also use a jelly roll for that too. So it's been really fun to play with, and I know that we're doing a collaboration, and I used it for my block.
I know. I will hold up the quilt here so everyone can see it. I'm so excited.
Look at it. So now you can see the braid shape that's in there.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I think it's such a cute little quilt, and I haven't quilted it yet because I need to let the design gestate a little bit. I have to look at it for a little while on my wall before I decide. I love the fabrics that you used. That was her name. Yeah. What was it again?
Jackie Kunkel's fabric from Island Boutique.
Yes, and she was at Market too, and that's how I met you. It was it was a serendipitous moment. I was introduced, and everybody kind of hit it off. It was wonderful. It was such a good time.
It was really fun, and I thought it was great to be able to use her fabrics for this collaboration since we had all been chatting together, and I just thought it was perfect, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And so, do you always set up for Quilt Market? Do you do that every spring and every fall?
No, actually, Elizabeth and I did it, we would do like 2 markets and then skip a couple and then do a couple and then skip a couple because it gets expensive. Um, and so actually, that was my first market since Elizabeth retired. So, yeah, and so it was a lot of work. It used to be that we were able to share that. She did a lot of the printing, I did a lot of the quilt making. We shared sort of the designing the booth and bringing stuff. But luckily for me, my daughter came with me. And she's been to Quilt Market a few times before, and she just loves to go and to get inspired by it. And so she's always a big help. So she came with me and helped me set up and man the booth. So it was a lot of fun. I think Quilt Market is amazing. I worry about it sometimes. I think that people are going less because they can see so much on the internet. There has to be a reason for shop owners to want to come. I know that for us at Quilt Market, there were 6 pattern designers, and what we did was we offered a block of the month. So we called it sort of a booth hop, and if you went to all 6 designers' booths and got a quote-unquote stamp in your passport, just like a quilt shop hop, then they would get, after market, they got links, and we gave them 6 blocks that they could use as a block of the month in their shop. And they could have only gotten it if they went to Quilt Market. So we're not giving it out to any other shops. It was only for shops that came to Quilt Market. And I think that was, a good enticement for people to come to our booth. And there needs to be more stuff like that to make shop owners come to market, because I think market is so inspirational. It's a lot of work, it's very expensive, and you walk away just rejuvenated and wanting to get right back into your business and do things and inspired to do things, and you meet wonderful people, and I just think it's great. I don't know how you feel about market.
Yeah, I feel, it's catch-22. I mean, it's very expensive. I have never made money going to market. I've been 3 times. So yeah, you're shaking your head. So like, do you just not expect to make money going? Like, how can I make a business decision that costs thousands of dollars and go into it knowing I'm going to lose cash like that? That doesn't make sense to my business partner, my husband, and so he doesn't want to justify it. And so whenever I went this fall, I went knowing that I wasn't going to be back for a few years. And so that's why I was just really focused on networking and meeting people and making connections and stuff, because it's like, I'm not going to be here, so connect with me. And that worked out really well. I mean, I think you have to go in with a set of goals and know what you want to get out of it. And in that case, I was very successful in what I got out of it. But monetarily, it added more debt to my business, and that's something that I'm very, very careful about. And tell me, like, as far as engagement goes, you can kind of judge engagement based on that blog hop that y'all did. That I guess we should call it the quilt show hop. I guess. So how many people completed it and went through everybody?
I'm trying to remember how many completed it. It was under 100. So it wasn't, and we must have given out, I'm trying to think how many postcards I had printed, because we gave out a lot of postcards. We gave out over 500 postcards, but less than 100 completed it. I don't remember the exact number. And I don't know if that was because there was only 6 of us, and we wanted to keep it to a small group because we didn't want to make it cumbersome, because, you have to go to 12 booths, and, you've got appointments with fabric companies and everything else. So we don't know whether it was that they couldn't find some of the booths. To be honest, I had people tell me they couldn't find my booth. I know. So they were like, oh yeah, I looked for you, I couldn't find you. So I'm not sure why they didn't finish. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure, But I know that one person specifically stopped at my booth at the end, because I was her last stop, and she said, I want you to know that I think this was a great idea and that yours is the favorite block of the month that I've seen. And I thought, wow. And I think part of that was because there were 6 different designers, and we all have a different design aesthetic. So I think that really helped to show off different different ways. Because, sometimes when we design a block of the month ourselves, then it all has a similar look to it because that's our design aesthetic. So I think it helped that we had 6 different designers and 6 different aesthetics. Can I say that 5 times fast?
I think that's really interesting. And honestly, return on investment wise, if you only printed 500 and you got, let's say 80 responses, I mean, that's better than average. Like you could probably expect a 10% response, and that's really good. So
Right.
I'd say engagement wise, it's really excellent. It's just volume. Like you need to get in front of X number of people, like let's say 10,000 people, in order to get 1,000 people to respond. And that's the volume of building a business is sometimes tricky, and that's the thing that is scary about Quilt Market, because as the numbers drop and less people attend, then the return on your investment, you have a smaller pool of people to attract, and a smaller pool of people that will potentially then be interested in and buy your stuff. So I think that's going to evolve. I think it needs to be merged into one market once a year, and it needs to be at a better time, because it's with fabric sales and stuff, buying fabric in October when we're going to be running inventory in January, January 1st, it kind of doesn't work.
It doesn't. And I think that, the fact that October is always right around Halloween, and, we have more and more younger people involved in Quilt Market. And people want to be home with their kids at Halloween. Kids, little kids dressing up in costume. I mean, what is cuter than that? You want to be home and see your kids dressed up in costume. You don't want to be at Quilt Market while stuff's going on at home. And then May is always tough because it's college graduations. And, so, yeah, the times of year are very difficult. And I think that they need to play with that. I agree. And I think once a year is enough. I think that as the industry was building, and prior to the internet, twice a year made sense. And twice a year for 3 days each made sense. But now you don't even need the 3 days. There were very few people who stopped by my booth on that last day that were shop owners coming to place an order. It was all other vendors at market that were just wandering around.
Yep, that's the day that everybody got cross shops between booths. Yeah, absolutely. So when going back to free patterns, we were talking about kind of the risk and challenge of that. Do you have like a process when you're writing a free pattern versus when you're writing a paid pattern, or are they identical? Like, do you write it the exact same way?
I write them very similar. For some fabric companies, they have a template a little bit that they want you to follow, or they don't want it to be too many pages. It's kind of like, a magazine versus writing my pattern. There's less information. So sometimes it depends on what they want. But for me, I want to give the same information when I can. One of the things that I like to give in most of my patterns is pressing instructions, or as I put it, pressing suggestions. Well, because I have a way I like to press. When I can, I like to press to one side, and then I like to, when I can, rotate press those seams, or some people call it furling. And other people love pressing open.
That's
so,
me. Yeah. It's so funny, that debate of pressing seams open versus pressing to one side. It is a debate within the quilting industry, and it's so funny. Why do you believe in pressing to one side?
For me, we all figure out ways that we can do better piecing. I am not a piecing expert. If you look at my quilts, you will notice little points are whacked up here and there, but I get close. I get really, really close. And over the years, I've come up with what works for me. And one of the things that works for me is having those seams going in opposite directions, having them butt up against each other, and putting a pin right next to that seam works for me. And more times than not, then I can make sure that junction stays together. I don't know if it's my machine. I don't know if it's the pressure of my, presser foot on the seams. But when my seams are open, I do have a tendency to slide off. And so they don't match up as well. So it might be just me and my machine. I don't know. But it works for me.
And now here's the other debate. Okay. Do you pre-wash your fabric or not?
I have to admit I don't.
Ah!
I don't. And I will tell you why I don't. Years ago, I always used to pre-wash my fabric. And I could go into my stash right now and I can say, oh, look, I pre-washed this one. Because I can tell, because, it's got all those little pieces hanging off of it. most of the time is because I don't have time. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I've actually had quilts due like to a magazine, and the fabric has come in on a Tuesday afternoon. I have to have it to the long armor Thursday morning because it has to be back to me and to the magazine on Monday.
Wow.
I don't have to rewash.
Yeah, you don't have time. You don't have time. And that's the realistic deadlines that a lot of people don't realize about magazines and quilt market. Like, designer fabric doesn't come in until like 6 weeks before you need the quilts for the catalog shoot.
Yeah.
So how are you going to make something fantastic, amazing, and brand new and innovative in 3 weeks or 6 weeks?
I mean, the time frames, people don't realize how fast the time frames come in. You know, there are times when I have a month to make a quilt, and there are times when I have 2 weeks or 3 weeks to make a quilt. Or sometimes, I mean, it's very rare that I've had 6 weeks to make a quilt, you know, from when I get the fabric to, you know, and sometimes people, you know, email you and say, hey, we've got this new line out. We'd like a design. Can you send us some, you know, ideas by tomorrow?
Sure, let me crank them out here for you.
So, you know, there is a lot of time frames in there that, you know, other people talk, oh, yeah, I love this quilt, and it took me a year to make. Well, it took me a week and a half because I had to.
So with
that's the challenges.
Yeah, and so with that, do you work a normal 9 to 5 day, or are you working longer hours? Like, what's your average day?
My average day, I start in the morning. I'll get up, have my cup of coffee. I'm usually at the computer by 7:30 at the latest. So that's when I check and see if I've gotten emails. Being in Colorado, and some of the people I deal with are on the East Coast, at 7:30, it's 9:30 for them, so I've gotten some emails. So, you know, I'm checking emails, I'm responding to things, you know, I'm looking at Facebook, I'm thinking about my day. If it's a day that I want a blog post up, if I haven't written it already, I put it up. For some reason right now on my website, I can't set the thing so that I write the blog post and it'll post itself, like 2 days later. So I always have to go in on blog post day and either dump it in and post it, or sometimes write it and post it because I was late.
Yeah. So it's just the auto post is not working for you right now. Yeah, little glitchy things like that happen. So you're up early, and then you're blogging, and then do you at some point you have to get off the computer, right? So how do you force yourself off the computer? Like, tell me how to do that.
Oh, don't you find that's the hard part? You know, next thing you know, you're on Facebook, and then you're on Pinterest, and then you pick up your phone and you're looking on Instagram. You know, I saw this. I listened to one of those lectures at Quilt Market, and it was on, you know, social media in like 15 minutes a day. And, you know, she talked about how it's really nice to go on Instagram and, you know, look at other people who are following you and looking at what they're doing and liking their posts and sort of being like polite on social media. You know, it's one way to look at it. And that's great. But then you get sucked in.
Oh, yeah. 2 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. 2 hours later, here I am, and I was supposed to be writing a pattern. So then, you know, for me, after I've done sort of like the bloggy stuff or whatever, and finally remember to have breakfast, I either start writing if I have to write a pattern that day, or I get sewing, or whatever it is I need to do. And oftentimes my hubby comes home, because he usually leaves around 7:30. He comes home around 6, and most of the time I'm sitting up on the computer, on the sewing machine, sewing away. I have a little loft right above me, and that's where I sew.
Nice.
So, yeah, and then weekends, it depends. Sometimes I have a deadline for Monday, and so I either need designs to crank out because they contacted me on Friday and need some designs on Monday, or I have a quilt that I just picked up and I've got to get it in the mail Monday. So oftentimes on the weekend, a portion of each day I am working. It's not a 9 to 5 job.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Is it for you?
No, not at all. It's work continually, and you know, because it's in my house, you know, you can't get away from it, and that's the challenge. Being able to put down very rigid structure and scheduling was something that we did a few years ago, and It's kind of like the quilting is always leaking back into the upstairs. Like we try and keep everything either downstairs or out in the crafty cottage, and it's always encroaching. It's always leaking back in. So no, we work on the weekends. We work every day of the week. Josh checks email, usually at 9 o'clock at night before we go to bed, because something can come in and you've got to take care of it. You've got to answer that question for that emergency customer who needs something answered right this second. So yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. As far as the deadlines and stuff, something that I've done recently is just said, I'm not going to work with a fabric company unless they give me more time, and I have more freedom, because otherwise it's not really worth it to me to just crank out another, kind of, low volume pattern. And so I've kind of set that, as a goal. Like, I want to make patterns that actually represent my style, and they take a little bit more time to develop, and they take a little bit more time to write, and they are more expensive to print because they're going to actually have a full size, print diagram with them. And that's important to me, but, I can see that's something that I'm kind of balancing with what I want to work on versus what I feel like I have to work on. Are you there yet, or are you kind of just feeling like I'll take the job? Yeah.
And it's so funny that you bring this up because, and I know that you thought about this too, is, a lot of businesses pick a word for the year. And the reason I'm saying that is because my word for the year is thoughtful. Because I want to be thoughtful in the jobs that I take. 2 years ago, when I was really trying to do this on my own, if somebody said, Kate, can you do this? I said yes. I said yes to everything because I felt that I was not well known and that I had to accept everything that came my way. I still think that, I need to be building my brand. I need to get my name out there. But I think at this point in time, I want to make sure that I'm more thoughtful about what I pick and what I do. Because I can get myself to the point where I've got 4 quilts due in the same month. And you're just working all the time. And it also may or may not be, like we talked about, in your aesthetic or the things that you want to do or the way that you want to move your brand forward. So I'm not there yet. But I want to think about it this year. I want to be thoughtful as I start to choose things and move forward. So it's sort of a long-winded answer, but I'm not there yet.
No, I'm trying. I completely understand. I do. And certainly that not being able to say no, I totally get that. And it's tough because for me, I was a big fan of The Secret and all those kinds of books and stuff. And I felt like if I say no, I'm saying no to the universe. I know, it's crazy. Like, my business is going to fail because I'm saying no to something. And like, well, if something doesn't actually jive and isn't actually going to move you forward, and that, that company is not going to really put your name out and be a cheerleader for you, then is it worth your time to kill yourself trying to get that quilted in a month, or a week? So I think there's always a balancing act there, and I wish you the best of luck with your business. This is the last question I ask everybody, is what are you most looking forward to in the next 5 years?
Most looking forward to, wow. Well, like I said, I'm going to be writing that second book, which I'm really excited about. But I'm also looking forward to really getting out more in the quilting community, really going to more guilds, meeting more people, teaching more classes, maybe, eventually teaching at a bigger quilt show, just because I really like talking with people about quilts. I think it's really, really fun. I've always had the aesthetic that, there's not just one way to do things. So that, I could teach it one way, you could tell me, well, I like doing it this way, and I'd be like, go for it. You go, girl, because we all have different ways of doing things. We find the ways we like, and I think we learn from each other. So I think what I'm looking forward to most is getting out in the community, quilting community, and really starting to meet more people and just interact more, because whether it's like what we're doing, interacting with other quilt designers and other people in the industry, but as well as interacting with quilters.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming, and why don't you tell everybody where they can find you online?
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me online at my website at seemslikeadream.com. I'm on Facebook, Seems Like a Dream Quilt Designs. I'm on Instagram at Seems Like a Dream Quilts. And I'm on Pinterest. You can find me in all sorts of places. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Kate, and the best of luck to you.
Thank you, Leah. This was so much fun. I'm so glad I was here. Thank you for having me.
So that's it for this episode. You can find show notes and links to everything we mentioned at freemotionproject.com, and definitely check out Kate's website, seemslikeadream.com. Until next time, let's go quilt.